Alright, so I'm going to be going over chapter 18 of the chapter of the strength and conditioning. So essentially this chapter goes over plyometrics, or the introduction of plyometrics into an athlete's training program. So plyometrics are exercises that involve rapid and powerful movements, and they combine strength and speed. They're aimed at improving that strength shortening cycle, or the SSC cycle of muscles. The cycle involves the transition between eccentric, which is the muscle lengthening portion action, and the concentric, which is the muscle shortening action. So the plyometrics are essentially used to enhance power for the athlete, and this is crucial for a lot of sports or any sports that require any sudden burst of speed, forces like basketball, football, or track and field events. So the basics of the plyometrics that this chapter review or that this chapter explains how plyometric training increases again the effectiveness of the SSC cycle, or the strength shortening cycle, and improve the force in production and also muscular endurance for athletes. And so plyometrics rely on the use of stored elastic energy in muscles and tendons, and contributes to more forceful and explosive movements. The training improves the neuromuscular adaptations and enhances the athlete's ability to recruit muscle fibers more quickly and effectively. So there are many different types of plyometric exercises. Usually it's lower body, upper body, and trunk. Lower body focuses, of course, on lower body muscles. Upper body focuses on the upper body muscles. And then trunk more specifically focuses on core strength and power. So for lower body plyometrics, that can be exercises like box jumps, squat jumps, and bounds. And upper body plyometrics are things like medicine ball throws, plyometric push-up variations or exercises, and any other exercises that target upper body for power movements. Trunk plyometrics can include movements like rotational throws and medicine ball slams, anything that engages the core muscles. So the exercises usually focus on, or they need to vary in intensity from beginner level to more advanced high intensity exercises like depth jumps or bounding. So there are many different training variables, and this specific chapter outlines the critical variables to consider when designing a plyometric training plan for an athlete. So for intensity essentially means and it is determined by factors examples would be height of a jump, speed of a movement, and the type of exercise that you're executing. Volume is also important, so you want to make sure that the volume is measured in, say for example, number of foot contacts for jumping or repetitions. So usually you can, say for example, increase the amount of repetitions you're doing per set in order to increase difficulty and in order to progress the plan for the athlete. The only thing with volume is that you have to be careful to avoid overtraining, which is common in athletes. The frequency can also be changed as well, or should be increased as well. So an example, or more specifically, usually plyometric sessions are between 2 to 3 times per week, and that is to help allow for recovery between sessions as well. And so usually if you're training an athlete, you also want to make sure that you're including strength-based training as well. So that can be like weightlifting as well. So making sure that you're involving those types of exercises and plans in your athlete's program as well. Again, to reiterate on rest and recovery, rest intervals between sets as well are also important. So usually for plyometric movements, you want to do between 2 to 3 minutes of recovery. I know in our strength and conditioning or our strength chapter, it can depend. It could be anywhere between 30 seconds to 2 minutes. But since for power movements, you're excluding or you're expending a lot of energy, you want to allow for more longer rest periods between each exercise. So some considerations for program designing are that this chapter emphasizes that plyometric training should be integrated into a well-rounded strength and conditioning program, like I mentioned before. So strength training, as well as aerobic conditioning and flexibility, are also all important, as well as plyometrics to include into an athlete's plan to make them more well-rounded within their sport or their activity. Plyometric exercises should be placed later in the training session when the athlete is warmed up and has sufficient energy for maximum effort. Maximum effort is really important when trying to plan for plyometric training. It is essential to consider the athlete's level of experience as well as physical conditioning when designing a plyometric program, and beginners may need to start with lower intensity exercises and gradually progress to more advanced drills. Another really important thing with plyometrics is safety. So a lot of plyometric movements are very explosive, and with that being said, it can involve essentially almost throwing weights around, and a lot of people can get injured if proper technique is not used. So proper technique is strongly emphasized throughout this chapter. An example should be that an athlete, or you should encourage an athlete to focus on absorbing impact with self-controlled landings to avoid any excessive stress on the athlete's knees or ankles. Plyometrics exercises should progress gradually in intensity and complexity, starting with low impact, low intensity movements and progressing to high intensity, more dynamic movements. Safety considerations are crucial. An athlete should have a solid foundation of strength, particularly in their lower body, before starting plyometric training or involving plyometric training into their program in order to prevent any injuries. For recovery and adaptation, adequate recovery between plyometric trainings is important to allow muscles and tendons to fully recover and to adapt to that training stimulus, especially when you're starting them on a new plyometric training program, or if they have never been introduced to plyometrics before. This chapter also suggests that the intensity and frequency of plyometric training should be carefully balanced to avoid overuse, once again, so to prevent overtraining and things like that, and to also optimize that athlete's performance and gains for their performance. So in order to as well monitor progress and to make any adjustments to the plan, the chapter highlights the importance of assessing an athlete's progress through performance metrics such as their vertical jump, their sprint times, or agility tests. Based on the assessment, the program should be adjusted to ensure continued improvement. So in order to use those tests here to your advantage so that you can adequately progress the athlete to do harder exercises and to again optimize their performance gains. So overall, to go more into depth about the strength shortening cycle, so there's 3 phases. The eccentric phase, which again is the muscle lengthening phase. The amortization, which is between the eccentric and the concentric. So say for example you're doing a jump, it's when your muscles are absorbing the power of your jump. And then there's the concentric, which is the lengthening phase. So some examples of some exercises that use strength shortening are depth jumps. Depth jumps are the best example of exercises that use the strength shortening cycle. You start off, usually when I think of depth jumps, the most common one is one from off of a box into a vertical jump. So you're jumping off of the box. That starts your eccentric phase. And the amortization phase is when the athlete jumps into that optimal plyometric stance, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. So before, when they absorb the power and they prepare for that jump, for that vertical jump, that's the amortization phase. And then the actual action of the vertical jump is the concentric phase. So there's depth jumps, box jumps, standing long jumps, and there are many more like that. And so they go through all 3 of those phases: the eccentric, amortization, and concentric phase. For exercises without this strength shortening cycle, some examples are a vertical jump, because I feel as though there's not necessarily an eccentric phase with vertical jumps. It kind of just goes straight into the amortization, into the concentric phase. So say for example, a vertical jump test could be considered an exercise without the full strength shortening cycle. Another example is single leg hops. So if you're doing static or in one position, a single leg hop doesn't necessarily have that full eccentric phase that you're looking for, and as well as the amortization phase as well, because it's more of a continuous movement. And so for the second question, to discuss a proper plyometric plan for that American football player that is the linebackman. So there's a lot of different things that you can include for a linebackman. Specifically for a linebackman, you should definitely target lower body power, so you can prepare them for things like pushing off the line. But I'm going to talk a little bit about some examples for everything. So lower body plyometrics, upper body plyometrics, and core strength. So specifically when we're talking about, and this is both kind of used for alignment in both offense and defensive roles, because their roles are very similar, or the explosiveness required for both of these positions are very similar. So say for example, for lower body power, we want to focus about the action of the athlete pushing off of the line whenever they're starting the play. The upper body power is in order to block, and then core strength is for stability. And so usually core strength is important for almost any sport. You know, it's your center mass, and so having a good core is a good foundation for any type of athlete. But specifically, it's for stability whenever they're receiving contact as well. So the program that I designed is so the focus is, other than just upper body, lower body, and core, are focusing on that explosive strength, which is in order to produce the quick, powerful movements, power, endurance. So in order the ability to keep going, just increase endurance. So in order to have those bursts of power repeatedly, and to be able to retain the most amount of power possible for the longest amount of time. And then, of course, core and upper body for pushing, pulling, maintaining stability, all those things. And then also agility and quickness. So being able to be quick to push off of the line is also really important. So the general program design for this is recommended, or the design that I came up with is 2 to 3 times per week, and ideally during the off season or preseason, with at least 48 hours of rest between these sessions. The intensity is going to be moderate to high, since alignment usually has high power output demands in short bursts. And the volume would be 3 to 4 sets per exercise, with reps ranging from 6 to 10 or fewer depending on the type of exercise. So a high intensity movement like a depth jump would likely be less repetitions. For progression, of course, you just gradually increase box height on box jumps, speed of movements, and just kind of keep track of their progress over time. For a warm-up, you would do a various type of dynamic exercises. Usually you want to do anything between 15 to 30 minutes of a warm-up, 10 to 15 minutes for a warm-up. That's an adequate amount of time to warm up before actually executing a plyometric exercise. There's a bunch of different things you could do for that, like swings, hip openers, arm circles, something that will engage both lower body and upper body. For activation exercises, you could do things like hip thrusts, glute bridges, and shoulder rotations, or also those are the sport-specific warm-ups. And then you can kind of start with some light plyometrics. So the ones that are low intensity are the ones that are not using the strength shortening cycle. Example would be some skip steps, boundings, small jumps, anything to, warm up, get the body ready for the exercises. There's a bunch of ones that I wrote down for lower body exercises that focus power, explosiveness, and stability. Some examples are squat jumps with 3 to 4 sets, or between 6 to 10 reps. And this is to help develop that vertical power and lower body explosiveness, more specifically that lower body explosiveness. And in order to increase progression, you can increase the depth or weight resistance. And then the next one I came up with was box jumps. Again, same thing, improve vertical and ability to generate force quickly. 3 to 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps. Depth jumps, lateral jumps, and that's to help lateral power and stability, and it's crucial for engaging in any type of side-to-side movements. And then some bounding, any type of bounding. There's a bunch of different variations of bounding, but any of them that involve quick, fast movements will help an athlete's ability to push off and develop long strides. And then that's also important because alignment needs to cover ground very quickly, so that'll help with that. And then you have tuck jumps, which again, vertical power and agility, explosiveness, all those things. And then for upper body, I have medicine ball chest pass, and that's to help develop that explosive power in the upper body for pushing and for blocking. Plyometric push-ups to build upper body power and stability for rapid push-offs and blocking. Overhead medicine ball slams, plyometric push-ups. And then for core plyometrics, this is going to be for stability, or focus is going to be stability and power transfer. We have medicine ball rotational throws and Russian twist with medicine ball. And again, that's going to help with rotational and just overall core plyometric power. And then in order to go over some of the proper plyometric landing positions, so when you're looking at an athlete from the side, you want to make sure that their shoulders are over their knees, so they're going to be in a slightly squatted position. I like to tell people that it kind of looks like you're about to sit down in a chair. So you want to make sure shoulders are over knees, and that's to help place them in their center of gravity and over the body's support. So you want to make sure their center of gravity is stable at all times. Feet are about shoulder width apart. And then when you're viewing an athlete from the front side, toes should be facing forward and their knees should be directly over their toes. So a big thing is making sure that an athlete's knees are not concaved inward or outward, because that increases the athlete's chances for injury. And that's pretty common, that we can see in a lot of athletes, is how they get injured is because whenever they're squatting or doing jumps, you can kind of see their knees concaving in. So a lot of times you can do a couple different exercises to combat that incorrect form or stance. So if your athlete's center of gravity is offset, it can, again, like I mentioned, their performance can be hindered and injury can occur. And this is also the injuries I was talking about. It can, a lot of times, it can cause ACL or anterior cruciate ligament injuries, which are very, very common within athletes, especially ones that use a lot of plyometrics. So we see them a lot in football, volleyball, basketball, all those things. And so that's all for chapter 19. That's the overall summary, and that I believe answers all three questions. Chapter 18. Thank you.